All right. So thank you all of you guys for joining us today. I want to welcome you to the first chapter of our webinar series with Tidal Health Group. We hope you are as excited as we are. Today's webinar will be productive and informative, and I have an SEO guru joining me, and together we will break down how your online reputation and SEO meshes together and why it matters. So let's get started. So my name is Michael Hamburg. I am a senior client success manager over at Doctorcom. And to give you all a little background, the reason for this webinar is a lot of clients often ask us about the big picture marketing efforts and what else they should be doing. So we brought in one of our trusted partners to talk SEO. Joining me today, I have Bryan Cush. Bryan is one of the co-founders of Tidal Health and helps run their strategic partnership team. He is one of our trusted partners who builds custom websites and manage everything SEO, search engine optimization for a lot of our existing clients. So Bryan, thanks for joining us on this journey. The big question, who is Tidal Health Group and how do Doctor.com and Tidal Health Group work together?
Yeah, thank you, Mike. I just want to say thank you and thank you to the Doctor.com team at large for inviting me on and having me here today. And thanks for everyone that's registered and joined us. And hopefully this is informative, and we certainly want you to keep submitting your questions that we'll try and address all at the end. I think the first question that you brought up is who are we and who am I? Tidal Health Group's been a digital marketing company for the last 10 years that I'm a co-founder, and more specifically, digital marketing in healthcare. Our partnership with Doctor.com has been standing for almost 6 years now, and it's exactly that. It's strategic. We see Doctor.com and your technology as a leader in the space around reputation management and data syndication. And we went out on behalf of our clients and fostered that relationship, and it's been a fantastic one for 6 years. Today, we hope to inform everyone that knows about Doctor.com and really how we use them on a broader scale and how we look at SEO against everything outside of what you guys don't do and what we do.
Great. Thanks for sharing, Bryan. So if you have been attending our previous webinars, we have gone into greater details about our solutions, including listings management, reviews, and appointment requests. If you've not seen those, I would recommend that you check those out. We will be sending out a link to that Doctor.com University page where you can access all of those recordings on demand as a follow-up from today's webinar.
Yeah, this is a great introduction and visual. I think that you've given an overview of kind of how we explain when we talk to someone that may not know Doctor.com, and I think everyone on this call does, but then how do we use your technology and our relationship to foster to that next level? A good way to think about what we do is that we use Doctor.com as a base requirement with any client we engage with, because your brand and your reputation needs to be in place before you think about doing anything broader from either even a paid budget or just new services around marketing in general. For us, when you think of the visual on the right-hand side, we know the broader sense of the 13 to 15 digital touch points that someone has before they reach out and make a phone call, an appointment, a physical interaction with that healthcare brand. The last step of that stage is researching the brand, which you, Mike, and your team at Doctor.com control well. For us, we then take that and leverage it to the next tier. So if someone doesn't know you by your name or your brand yet, they are searching for the things that you do. So when you think about conditions and symptoms, treatments and procedures, we take that search and start to associate it to your brand. And in the simplest sense, that's the bridge that we gap, is bringing people that don't know who you are yet to you by the things that you do. At the end of the day, those services range from anything from SEO in the broader sense down to the content and the video and the media that we produce behind that cause search engine optimization.
I'm sorry about that, guys. My computer cut out for a second. I apologize. But just to break down what Bryan was saying, it's like if you find one of your doctors online and there isn't any deeper meaning to who that doctor is in terms of their information is wrong or it's not accurate, Doctor.com puts meaning into SEO. So like Bryan was mentioning, before or after after an SEO search result comes up, what happens next? And then we're going to go through the patient journey in just a little bit. So I'll kind of break that down for you guys just so you understand. But as you can see from this image, uniform listings, reputation management, and ease of booking is one piece of the puzzle when it comes to SEO. And I'm going to now hand it off to Bryan just so he can connect the dots and discuss what his group does.
Yeah, I think one of the easiest ways to start to understand, not only from a technology, but an overlap stance of really how we support together, is we like to use the concept of kind of a central source of truth around your data. So when you're working with Doctor.com, they're starting to own and understand all your data from your provider listings, from who you are, what you do, your board certifications, everything about you. We then extend that source of data to your website and then take that information and expand it and market it to the searchers at large. So for us, we represent, when we work with a new client, that we're your trusted advisor for all things digital, but we're not going at it alone. We have our partners that can control those third-party directories, but we're making sure that we understand and control that search result. We like to think of it as a real estate. And as we go through this, there's a couple of visuals, I think, that will really drive that home of understanding SEO and a search result almost as a real estate. Let me dig in now a little bit, hopefully bring some more nuts and bolts to what that actually means. Just to call out what it is, SEO is an acronym in the marketing industry called search engine optimization. It's evolved drastically over the years, but in the simplest sense, it's starting to understand what you say online and your own website and how search engines read that information to make you rank higher. More specifically, the way we like to think about it in healthcare is how do you represent your authority? And that concept of authority is something we bring up a lot. How we do it is anything from thinking about how you structure your website, from the content that you produce on your website, from the content that's written in the reviews that are written out, the graphics that you associate to your listings on your website. Even the backlinks that are created by Doctor.com are a signal to search engines that if this person's listed on a healthcare directory and it points to their website, there's a strong indication that that website has got to be healthcare related. So holistically, when you think about all those things, each one of them is a signal to a search engine that's starting to understand and explain your authority as a doctor. The first step, I think, is understanding that using Doctor.com as our foundation is gathering valid and real reviews. There's really three factors to that we constantly think about from a reputation standpoint is quality, quantity, and recency. I think everyone understands quality and quantity, but just to talk what they are is positive reviews and a lot of positive reviews. That's never an understanding that most people don't get, but recency is also a factor that you don't want to just go out, get a great review, and then stop and not think about it. How recent that review is gathered is a strong indication to your search results as well. That recency factor is something that even then extends further from a search engine standpoint, is that when you're producing information about healthcare, you're held at a higher standard by the internet. They've really made it clear that if you're producing information that affects someone's health, they want to know the voice behind it and make sure that it's the most relevant and up-to-date information. So when you think about recency, we often encourage or do the work on behalf of our clients of going back to their information when you think about articles and blogs and infographics and making sure that it's aligned with the most recent information that's come out medically. So that concept of recency really extends past just your reviews, not to all the information that you produce about yourself online.
Thanks, Bryan. Now that we have learned a little bit about SEO, let's talk about the patient journey. We know that 83% of patients start their digital journey using search engines to find a provider, mainly Google and Bing. But that is just the beginning. I want you guys listening to think of Google as like an airport. It is the starting point of the journey, but it is not the final destination. Google provides an informative but limited snapshot into your practice. It is important to make sure you have a complete Google My Business profile and that your office hours, website, phone number is up to date. We want to represent your business from the first impression all the way through the patient journey. For the more in-depth details for your practice, patients tend to seek out the healthcare specific websites and to find out more information, like insurances accepted and procedures performed. Again, that data isn't provided by necessarily Google's front page. That is why the websites that do show up on the first page of the search results are equally important to pay attention to as your Google listing on your own website. On average, patients check 2 to 3 sites for information about a provider before making a decision, even after a trusted referral. So what that tells us is, sure, a friend can go ahead and give us a referral, but that friend wants to double check and make sure that everything that our friend said is lining up with what's being said about this provider online. In fact, 88% of patients read reviews of referred providers. Having that social proof in the form of unbiased reviews can be that final piece to drive new patients through your door. To make sure you do not have any referral leakage, a steady stream of testimonials and accurate information across the web is key. Now, I'm going to pass it back over to Bryan to dive into the anatomy of a search result. So get excited.
Thanks for that breakdown, Mike. I want to apologize to you as well. My Bluetooth keyboard just disconnected and it flip slides on you mid-conversation. So
no worries.
I apologize, but you went on without a stride. Yeah, I mean, to dig in now to the topic of this, and I think something that everyone resonates with and understands visually, is the anatomy of a search result. We pulled out a shared client here that's been longstanding with Doctor.com and our efforts for 2 reasons. First off, to show really the scope of a search result. We understand that the information here is probably hard to read in specific, so we're going to highlight and pull out elements in the next slide. But we really wanted to intently show numerous search results that come up and the visual value of our partnership together. When we think about a search result, connecting back to my earlier comment, we really think about it as real estate. I always encourage our clients, our potential clients, or anyone that we're talking with to really think about it as a consumer. When you search for something, you want as much information to validate the searches that you're making. And in this example, this person's already down that search journey path and they've identified a provider. So when they search that provider's name, be it the actual provider's name or the practice's name, they're looking for validation that the research that they did is now a valid person to reach out to and make a decision. So things like reputation are highlighted throughout that, but there's multiple steps that also should be validated in that search journey. Just to start to highlight and pull out some of these results and just speak through them and start to really slice the anatomy of this result. Just to call out as well, we also highlighted them intently. The ones in blue are controlled by platforms that Tidal Health has done on behalf of this client, and the ones in green are controlled by the technology and partnership through Doctor.com. As you can see, that real estate is almost completely owned through us jointly. And that's that concept of being the trusted advisor and owning all digital experience. For us, just to start through those photos at the top there are original photos. That's answering the patient's question about experience. So when they search that provider, they're already getting a visual snapshot into what door they're going to walk through. They're seeing the staff that are going to greet them. They're seeing the warm, comforting environment that that office offers. As you sift through those photos, you're going to see that they're going to offer you flavored water. You're going to see that they're going to offer you coffee. They're answering all those experience questions and really making the sell without even interacting with that practice. As you walk down to the next slide, highlight, that's an ad. What that ad does is allows us to control more real estate as well and highlight the information that we want to highlight around that provider. Highlight that they've done patient case studies, highlight the philosophy behind them, and answer all those questions that a patient in the past used to have on the phone. When they would call, it's not that this information is not seeked anymore, it's just consumed in a different way. So we want to still answer those questions. We want to answer those questions digitally and almost do that sale and that conversation before they reach out to you physically. It's a little bit of a teaser. The next point is the practice website. On our upcoming webinar, we're really going to dig into on-site SEO. So we won't spend too much time here, but we think of your website as just another pipeline. It's another point of validation on your reputation, your information about who you are, what you do, and who you treat. So in the scope of real estate here, this is just another data point and another validation to that patient of being your website within these listings.
Thanks, Bryan. And great points about the patient experience and getting a visual from the first thing a patient sees when they log on or when they land on a search result. So as Bryan mentioned, his company focuses on those areas that are highlighted in blue. And you can see these other search results highlighted in green are what we cover. These industry-specific websites like Healthgrades, Vitals, WebMD.com support and strengthen all of these SEO efforts that Tidal Health manages. On average, a patient has 13 to 15 digital interactions over a 2-week span before making a decision. And between our two groups, we make sure that we cover as much of that online real estate as possible. So that means that a patient might click onto Healthgrades one day, and then 3 days later, they might want to check that provider out on Vitals.com. Or of course, their own website. So we're making sure that this doctor is covered and up to date and accurate everywhere that's possible. Something else that you'll notice highlighted in green is in the section of your Google My Business listing that is pulling in reviews from the web. So in the bottom right-hand corner, you can see reviews from the web, and it says Vitals.com and WebMD physician directory, and you'll see a 4.8 out of 5 and 5 out of 5. In this example, these are both Doctor.com partners that have provider reviews on these sites prominently displayed. So every time that you guys collect a review across the Doctor.com network, it's being distributed to, of course, our entire partner network, but it's also being filtered into the Google My Business Knowledge panel, which says reviews from the web, which is titled Reviews from the Web. And it's another strong way to represent your practice with a strong score and ranking to collect reviews. So I'm going to hand it back over to Bryan just to finish out this slide, and then we're going to head into our Q&A, guys. So get excited.
Thanks, Mike. And that's a great point of just really reinforcing that we're controlling those 13 to 15 digital touch points and really trying to make sure that they're all seen in a positive light, which really just means good reviews. To continue down the list on the right-hand side, another search result there, I think, is a really straight line of that showcasing your authority concept that we push and really define as SEO, is that this was a health summit. There's a health summit done in partnership actually with a medical association that this doctor was highlighted on. So we made a point to work with that association to take their physical efforts that they were doing in the research, the publications, the content they were producing, and make sure that that was equally represented digitally. So that summit now itself is another validation that this provider is active in their community, active in the medical research that they're doing, active in the relevant associations that are really key and what is important to their potential patients. So that's a really good example of thinking about off-site SEO, is we always really take a light and shine it at what you're doing in your physical world. What are the things that you're already doing? What are the relationships that you already have that make you the authority? And how do we make sure that online is representing that? And that's really the gap on answering the question of optimizing yourself for representing your authority. Is a lot of times what you're doing in the relationships you have in the physical world exist. You're just not fully representing them online. To kind of continue down, just to touch on, the next few are highlights of reviews that are pulled again from that technology partnership with Doctor.com. And then more specifically, the next is video. I'm sure it's not new to you outside of just the category of healthcare, but really across the board, video consumption is becoming the primary source of information. If you guys don't know, YouTube is seen as the second largest search engine. So even though that they're owned by Google, people are going specifically to youtube.com and making searches for information, looking to consume the responses in a video format. So this is kind of a simple supply and demand. If people are looking for and demanding for healthcare information in a video format, we want to supply it to them. And as a provider and as someone with a healthcare background, you're of an authority to do that. So making sure that you speak to the things that people are looking for. If you even dig into the specifics around the video topics themselves, I think one of the simplest and easiest to answer is just who you are, is introducing yourself in a bio video. It really reinforces that experience concept back to the office photos, that person already knows how you speak, what you speak about, and the information in your background. And then walking down the next few, they start to associate that provider to the category that they're in, and then the conditions and symptoms that they treat. So each one of these, again, to hammer down on that real estate concept, is just a validation that this person was doing a search around an experience that they had. That journey started with something very simple and layman. It was more than likely a condition or a symptom, and they went through all those touch points. And as you look at this real estate, it's associating that potential patient's concern to this provider. And then that provider is associated to all these external validations about their reputation and their reviews. I hope that was a good introduction to understanding the anatomy of a search result. I know we've walked through a lot of information. I just want to say first, thank the Doctor.com team again, Michael for joining me and everyone for joining here. And we want to let people know that this will be recorded. You will have access to this. And we do actually have a PDF that will follow up, not only with the information on the slide, but even the information that we've talked to today and some more visuals to really reinforce that concept of the digital touch points and the information that Mike and I presented today.
Thanks, Bryan. And yeah, just a big takeaway is that between both Doctor.com and Tidal Health, we make it so easy for a patient to find what they're looking for when they do a search for a provider. And that's ultimately the goal, is to get them into the office. So with that, we'll open it up to our participants, and you guys can chat. Any questions you guys might have, please feel free. Don't be shy. Just let us know what you're thinking, and we'll definitely answer your questions.
I think one topic we get talked about as well and asked often, and I think comes from both sides of us, is what should we do first? Or how do I look at this? Should I build a website? Should I gather reviews? And the answer for us always is both. That you need to establish a reputation, but you also need to have a home base for who you are online. That's really how we think about and treat our clients' websites, is that it's just the foundation of your brand online. And then Doctor.com is the branches off that foundation to those third-party directories, really those validations to what you're saying on your own website.
So from Heather, our practice is really busy and sometimes forgets to get reviews. How many reviews frequency do you recommend? That's a great question, Heather. So the sweet spot and something that I recommend to all of my clients is if you can collect 2 to 3 reviews per week per provider, that kind of alludes to what Bryan was saying earlier. It adds to the quantity. It will hopefully there'll be quality reviews, but most importantly, it will create recent reviews, which are what patients want to see. Reviews have a very short shelf life. So if you can, I'm not asking for you to collect a review from every single patient that walks in. That would be overkill and it would be too much for a practice to handle. But if you can space them out, a general rule is maybe Monday, Wednesday, Friday, depending on what days you guys are in the office. It's a great way to strengthen the voice and the story of the provider by feeding in those recent reviews on a weekly basis. I always like to say this is a never-ending process until the provider retires, because we want to continue gaining new patients. We want to keep giving information, providing information out there for potential patients, and we want to get them across the finish line. So does that answer your question, Heather?
I can expand on that too. I think it's to reinforce that. We always have the same concept that we tell people. It's a marathon, not a sprint. And it's particularly with the reviews, you'll see over time that people will explain what you do and the experience they had differently. And then that next potential patient is just looking to resonate and find someone that's experiencing similar. If you think about the concept from our anatomy research result image, that provider works in a space around pelvic health that was often a misconstrued category that was people thought was only experienced with female patients. One of our team's most favorite things to do is do video testimonials. And as we speak to them, it surprises us every time that someone categorically would look for reviews and almost not make that choice of a provider because they couldn't find someone to validate what they were experiencing. If that's the gender they were, or the age they were, or the cause of their injury, they're really trying to find someone that's closely associated to them and hear their experience.
Awesome. What else do we have? Don't be shy, guys. Anything. SEO, online reputation, feel free to shout it out in the chat box. So from Melissa, excuse me, just read this. We'll get to your question in a second, Dom, but first we'll answer Melissa's. So what's your guidance on sharing reviews to social media? Help with SEO. So I get this question a lot. Through your relationship with Doctor.com, we can have our social publishing tool displayed on your Facebook. So every time you guys collect a 4 and 5 star review for your provider, we can have it automatically published onto your Facebook page, which is great because it acts as a post. It keeps your Facebook fresh and recent and relevant, which is really powerful. In terms of Instagram, sure, maybe once in a while you can create a post that says something like that takes the review that a patient left, and you can create it and make it look good on Instagram and post it yourself. But I wouldn't say it's something that's necessary, and that's not why people are looking at your practice on Instagram. And in terms of reviews on social media and SEO, Bryan, do you want to handle that one?
Yeah, I can tack on top of that. There's a couple ways to think about that. I'm sure we've all seen it when you make a search for something, that a Facebook page or even a post within it will actually show up as a search result. So the content within these social platforms is seen as something that can get indexed and shown as a search result. So as you have a more robust and active social page, that's just another form of real estate that you can take when the search result happens. So immediately you already have that syndication and ability to share through partnerships with Doctor.com. But even to take it to a next level is that for us, actually, this is a little into a new topic, but from a patient acquisition standpoint, social is still one of the smallest categories, but it's the fastest growing. So people are going to social almost like how they go to Google or YouTube to validate that you're active, you have a social profile, and that people are sharing their experience on those profiles.
Thanks, Bryan. And I don't know if you saw Dominique's question, or it's pretty in depth, but it's definitely right up your alley, Bryan. I don't know if you want to take a look at it and then kind of respond to him as you read it.
Yeah, I'm reading through, and I think it goes to everyone, so I won't read verbatim, so people have to hear me. Yeah, this is a really, really pointed and great question. I'll just say right off the bat. And then I'll even say the answer to this has evolved over time. And I'll just answer it where I think it lands now, is that in the past, you would create separate pages almost to a different keyword. But the algorithm and the AI behind Google and more search engines at large has changed so much that they're better understanding an intent and want to associate similar terms. So the industry technology, or the industry acronym around it, is called latent semantic indexing. Really what that means at the end of the day is that you want a page to speak about a topic and then the associated things around it. So instead of going after and creating a page that says knee pain specialist Georgia or knee fracture Georgia, you want to create a pool around what's the main theme of that page and what's the different variables of how people say it, and write that content or that information in a digestible way that encapsulates all those different variables. So it's a different approach, especially depending on who you've talked to or how long the person's been in the industry. But it's definitely been where we're actually either merging content or removing old content from some of our longer standing clients and creating more of these centralized informative pages.
It was a great point, Dom, and even better response, Bryan. So thank you.
Yeah, and I think just to hammer, and there's a second half of it around video, that it's a great point as well. And when I think about that particular search result of that client in the anatomy example, the video that is seen in that search result is showed and showcased from YouTube. But we're also taking that video and embedding it on the relevant page on that practice's website. We actually even take an audio format and embed it as well. So we're giving a searcher every different media format to consume that information. So taking your knee pain example again, if you're producing video around what knee pain is and you upload that to YouTube, you're allowing a user to find you on YouTube, but you also want to take that media asset and put it on your own website around the written content that speaks to that same content, that speaks to that same topic. So when a user comes to your site, they be in a setting or in a format that they want to consume that information differently than just reading it. So we're giving them options on how to consume that information in different media formats. Two things I can expand on that too that I think are asked or either directly or indirectly is trying to rank locally. One of those main factors is controlled by Doctor.com, is that your listings have name, address, phone number is really NAP is the acronym in the local SEO world. So making sure that that information is correct and uniformed across the board, or all those backlink signals back to your website. So if you incorrectly label an address or a suite number or a phone number, you want to make sure that that information is uniformed. So then all those local provider directories are not competing against each other, making it seem like your information is incorrect. And then I'll even lead into, that's a huge piece of our next upcoming webinar, is on-site SEO around local. And more particularly, it's a coding language called Schema that we'll dig into, that really starts to answer your question really in depth around local SEO ranking and how you can control that on your own website.
Anything else from anyone? Oh, I'm sorry.
I love the next question. Actually, I was going to say, I think it was the same. Dominique came through. Well, thank you, Melissa, first off, for saying thank you. Thank you for attending. I love Dominique's question. I think I get this every day, if not every week. She's asking if is it worth attempting starting a new brand when you've established competitors like Mayo Clinic? The immediate answer, and always been, and it still has been, is 100%. One of the easiest ways I try and answer that is that healthcare is the largest category of digital searches online. That number is crested into trillions of searches each year. The partnerships, and this is funny, in the PDF that we're going to send, one of the elements that we call out about how establishing your authority is, we call it kind of like the 6 degrees of separation, is how do you get yourself closely associated to the source. Google has come out and made it publicly known, if you search, and we link to this, that whenever you see a knowledge panel or a piece of information that's highlighted in a search result, they list the medical provider behind it. A lot of them is Mayo Clinic, Cleveland Clinic, NHS, these big healthcare categories. But that does not even begin to scratch the surface on the amount of healthcare searches that are made online. These categories are really just going after the common, well-known medical terminology searches, where almost 80% of healthcare searches online fall into the category of symptoms and conditions. Those are layman things that people are searching that they ultimately don't know what they have yet. So to me, that's a wild opportunity to still rank well, and don't see that going anywhere for a foreseeable future. And I hope that answers your question. Is that realistic to hit first page for a new ortho practice? I think it's specialty agnostic. My comment wouldn't change in who you are and what you do, because something, and this number is skewed a little bit, but something around 70 to 90% of searches that happen today didn't happen yesterday. So people are consuming and understanding healthcare differently each day forward. So that's half of our job when we dig in, is to look at the layman terminology that people are searching and translate into, is that medically relevant to our clients? And I think in a funny sense, Doctor.com maybe would certainly still exist, but we're a smaller agency relatively. We wouldn't exist if the answer to that wasn't yes. We're not working with the Mayo Clinics of the world. The practices and clients we work with are private, number one, and kind of work in different sizes, from single doctor to multi-doctor, multi-location. And it's the reason why we exist, is being that middleman of not being an institution that has a large marketing department, but still being a business in a healthcare space that has a valid service offering. And how do you represent that? And how do you separate yourself from the crowd?
And that's a great point, Bryan. I mean, between the both of us, what we do is we help differ your practice from your competitors by enhancing your profiles across all these different websites we have, your provider's listed on. And from an SEO standpoint, we're making sure that the search results that do come up when somebody searches for a provider's name are cleaned up and as accurate, again, as possible, which is so crucial among and along the patient journey. And that's another really big takeaway from today. So.
Yeah, that's that tier one concept and that joint partnership visual is that we see you guys as the foundation of the home. This needs to be stable. This needs to be correct. And then that's us building on top of that foundation of going, okay, we now control your brand, but ultimately a lot more people know what you do than who you are. So now that your brand is controlled and you have a good reputation, let's go out to the market and start associating your name to what you do.
Everyone's looking for a competitive advantage, and by working with us, it helps you guys stand out amongst the competition, which is what we want to help do, is help promote you and enhance you guys and make you look great.
Yeah, it's a funny concept. We always say that, like, when people ask us, they go, how many searches do you do when you're in that department store about to buy a t-shirt or socks? And you want to find the best price. You want to find the great reviews around it. You want to see what other people are saying. That's no different than healthcare. And if anything, healthcare is even more elevated, that people want numerous validation points. And we just see that as an opportunity. That is a complex journey, but as you understand it and almost look at it from a consumer's perspective, it's just validating those questions, concerns that we all have when we're making decisions.
I just want to point out, Bryan, did you see Dominic's chat?
Oh, yeah. Well, appreciate that, Dominic, already. And I look forward to any questions and concerns that we can address and speak together. And I think we open that up to everyone. Mike, if you guys have questions, I think they all probably have a contact point with your team. But in our PDF that will follow up about information in this slide will be contact information for our team, or it sounds like some of you have found us online already.
Yeah. And for you guys listening, you can reach out to your client success managers with any questions, any more information regarding today's webinar. We'll be glad to provide that information for you guys. And I just want to thank everyone. I want to thank you, Bryan, for taking the time with us today. It really means a lot. You have so much knowledge in the SEO space, and it's so valuable for not only being a partner of ours, but for our clients to hear from you as well. And I want to thank everybody else who took the time to listen to the webinar today. And again, this is part one of a larger series of webinars to come with Bryan, aka our SEO guru here at Doctor.com and our trusted provider. So again, Melissa, Heather, Dominic, thank you so much for your questions, and everybody else listening. And we will be sending out a follow-up PDF via email. And please feel free to reach out with anything that you guys ever need from either of us. We're here to help, and we want to be part of your success as much as you guys are.
Yeah, and I don't think I'm speaking on a line. We're going to try and get an area for them to submit questions and topic suggestions for the following as well. I think it's kind of why we intently didn't lock in a date yet, as we wanted to get everyone's feedback on this call and address more on-site topics for SEO related to your website on the next webinar. So
get excited, part 2.
You're stuck with our mugs.
Yeah. But again, thank you everybody for doing this and coming, and we'll be in touch.
Thanks everyone. Thanks for taking time out.
Everyone listening, collect some reviews, all right? It's only going to help. All right, take care, guys.